Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto Audio Fanfics and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is What If Naruto United the Hearts of Hinata, Temari, Tayuya and Shion, Part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. So big and strong. You must have many women hungry for something like this, said Samui with Naruto nodding his head. A total of 5 women are already addicted to mai, said Naruto with Samui counting. Your mother and Tsunade-sama. That makes 2. She said with Naruto shaking his head. Koyuki-chan, Mabui-chan and Yugao-chan. 5. He said with Samui shrugging her shoulders. I don't care, she said as she gave the head of his a long and passionate lick. Naruto titled his head back as he felt her expert tongue flow along his. Spitting on the to provide extra lubrication, Samui began jacking him off. Planting kisses along the shaft and head. And not leaving his orbs untouched. Naruto was going crazy. Much like how he took Koyuki's first time, he knew he should let her take the lead. There was always a later time to make her his cumdom like the others. You like? Purred Samui. I do, said Naruto with Samui smirking. Well, it gets better, said Samui taking the head into her mouth. Naruto moaned as he felt her tongue dance over his head while Samui jacked him off. Running his hands through her blonde hair, Naruto soon felt more of his enter her mouth. Pushing further and further, Naruto watched as his vanished into her mouth. She soon hit her gag reflex. Finding only 2 more inches left, she braced herself and pushed further. Taking his entire length into her mouth and down her throat. Damn Samui-chan. You're the second person to take my hole into their mouth, said Naruto with Samui coming back up and pulling his out her mouth. Who was the first? She asked. My Ka-chan. Was all Naruto said. It doesn't matter. I'm going to do my best to make you cum, said Samui taking him back into her mouth. Naruto soon began to moan in pleasure as Samui botted her head on his, massaging his balls as well as Samui sucked him off, adding slurping and sucking noises to make the experience as enjoyous as possible for Naruto. But Naruto soon felt his release coming up. Samui-chan. Here it comes, said Naruto. Taking his out her mouth and sandwiching it between her tits, she jacked him off while keeping an expression on her face. It was not her best expression, but still a decent shot. Naruto soon began to thrust, bringing himself to his growing climax. After a few thrusts, Naruto exploded the cum he had waiting for her. Samui moaned in pleasure as the thick ropes hit her face and chest. When the loads died out, she removed her tits from his and licked up the cum from her face. So delicious, she purred as she sucked her fingers. I think we take this into the shower, said Naruto. I like the sounds of that, said Samui. Getting up and moving to the shower, Samui ran the water only to be slammed against the wall when the water became warm. Samui-chan. I'm sorry. I can't hold back anymore. I must have you, said Naruto as he brushed his against her. Samui merely smiled as she nodded her head. Sure. Me however you want to. Just be gentle, she said to her lover. Doing as instructed, Naruto pushed his into her warm confines. Samui bit her finger as she felt the larger than average move into her, splitting her folds as it continued to move up into her. Samui even feared that the may split her in half at this rate. But soon, Naruto hit a barrier. Giving Samui a kiss, he pushed past it. Samui gave a pained cry and threw her pain into Naruto's mouth, letting his devour her pain. After a few minutes, Naruto removed his lips from hers. Samui sighed in content as she felt better now. Looking to Naruto, she nodded her head. Okay. You can move now, said Samui. Doing as he was told, Naruto began to move his hips, starting at a slow and comfortable pace. He watched as Samui hung her head as she dug her nails into the wall. Looking to Naruto who was behind her, she licked her lips. Me harder. Show me why the 5 women are your cumdumps, she demanded. Very well, said Naruto as he soon picked up the pace. Samui soon began to realize that what she said may have been a mistake. The way Naruto was making her feel, she feared she may end up as his new cumdump. Too late for her to say to him to stop. She was already losing her mind in the pleasure, groaning and grunting as he thrusted into her tight snatch. Naruto watched as her jiggled and rippled with every movement. Juices leaked out of her as Naruto had his way with her. But he soon felt his release coming up. Samui-chan, I'm gonna come, warned Naruto, bringing the blonde bombshell back to reality. Inside. Come inside me. I want to feel it inside me, moaned Samui as she felt her release building. Giving a few more thrusts, Naruto grunted as Samui threw her head in pleasure. Her juices flowing over Naruto's shaft as she felt his cum flood her. Her mind soon went blank from the amazing feeling as wave after wave of cum flooded her womb. Pulling out of her, Naruto sat on the bench of the shower, only for Samui to stand in front of him. Setting one knee on the bench, she went to straddle him. Sliding his back into her, Naruto's hands shot to her waist. Samui-chan, are you becoming addicted to me? Asked Naruto. A little late to ask me that. I already think I'm addicted to your, she said as she began to ride him. Naruto began to add his own thrusting into her. Samui threw her head back as she felt Naruto's move inside her. This feeling, the sheer ecstasy of having Naruto her, sent her on such a high that she knew she was addicted to him. There was no denying it now. She was Naruto's, his cumdump, his personal whore. Oh, yes. Violate me. Defile me. Ruin my, this horny bitch into oblivion, moaned Samui as she rode Naruto faster and faster. Samui-chan, are you really willing to say you belong to me? To abandon your way of living just for a few hours of me, you? Asked Naruto, his dominating side taking over. Yes SSSSSSS. YYYYEEEEEESSSSSS. I am yours. I'm your toy. Your toy. I'm your property. I belong to you now. This. Only you can it. It belongs to you. I will always belong to you. Please. Give me your cum. I want it so bad, she said as her tongue hung out her mouth while her eyes rolled into the back of her head. Well then, I'll give you your daily dose of cum whenever you want, said Naruto as he thrusted harder and faster. Yes, Naruto-sama, I belong to you. I am your tool. I am your cumdump. This whore is yours. Now please. I beg you. Come inside me, she howled as she rode her lover. With a few more thrusts, Naruto fired a second load of cum into her womb. Samui threw her head back as she felt her womb fill up even more. The feeling felt incredible. Nothing would stop her from having his cum inside her. Nothing. With his loads dying out, Naruto scooped up Samui. Supporting her weight on his arms that were now tucked under her knees, he began to her in this position. Ah, yesh. I love this so much. Me mesh your cum. I want it so bad, moaned Samui as her mind began to break from the pleasure. Damn Samui-chan. You really have turned into a. Even after dumping 3 loads into you already, said Naruto in a tone. I belongish to you now. I am your slut, she howled as Naruto continued to ram into her filled cunt. Yes you are. Now take my load, said Naruto, ready to finish off. Giving a few more thrusts, Naruto fired a final load of cum into Samui. Watching her back arch as she howled to the heavens as she felt his cum fill her up. Her belly slightly bloated from the amount of cum in her system. Pulling out of her, Naruto turned off the water and carried her to the bed. Thank you so much. She moaned as she fell asleep. You're welcome, said Naruto as he got dressed and headed back to the home where Mabui and Tsunade were in. Once he arrived, they picked up where Samui left off. By the time morning came around, bid them farewell with Samui following them after handing in her letter of resignation. Accepted this and went back to work on his duty as the Raikage of Kumo. Tsunade left to return to Konoha while Naruto escorted the two busty women back to his home that he, Kushina and Yugao were at. When he opened the door, he came to the amazing sight. Yugao and Kushina stood there in the best seductive pose ever as they smiled seductively to their lover and son-lover respectively. Welcome home, Naruto-sama. They chimed together. A welcome home indeed, said Naruto as he felt himself get hard again. I see you have some new women to add to our love sessions, said Kushina licking her lips as she looked them up and down. I did, said Naruto as he too got undressed and moved through the house. You don't wear clothes? Asked Mabui looking rather surprised by the sudden change Naruto did. By order of Naruto-sama. We are forbidden from wearing clothes. But bikinis are okay. As long as it is like. Plus, it's easier seeing we can just get into having instead of wasting time on getting the clothes off than having, said Yugao with Kushina nodding only to have the red-haired MILF grabbed by her son. Come on. Time for you to have some cum, said Naruto with Kushina squealing in delight as she was led to the bedroom. And what about me? Asked Yugao pouting. You'll get your turn. But first, I have a rather horny Ka-chan to take care of, said Naruto looking to the purple-haired former Anbu. But I'm also horny, moaned Yugao. I didn't sense your pheromones when I got close to the house. All I felt was Ka-chan demanding from me through her scent, said Naruto as he looked to Kushina who was already on her knees and sucking him off. It's not fair, moaned Yugao. You can warm up with them, spat Naruto pointing to Mabui and Samui. Scooping up his horny mother, Naruto shot up the stairs into the master bedroom while Yugao eyed the two kunoichi like a predator. I hope you're ready, said Yugao as she pounced. For well over the remainder of the day, the entire house was filled with moans and screams of pleasure as the entire of the occupants romped like rabbits. With a new day breaking, the occupants of the house in the mountains were woken up by a rather powerful cry of pleasure. Opening their eyes as they looked about, they found themselves in the master bedroom. But two of the people were missing. One was the man they were lusting after, Naruto Uzumaki. The second, well, it was not hard for them as she had the only type of hair color and eye color there was. One red-haired MILF mother was not in the bed. I sure wish Naruto-sama would us like that, moaned Mabui as she slowly got out the bed and stood on shaky legs. He did last night, but you passed out halfway through it, said Samui as she found herself pinned by a still sleeping Yugao who was sucking on the busty blonde's left tit. Naruto-sama, your tastes so much like milk, moaned Yugao in her sleep. I'm not Naruto-sama, said Samui as she struggled to get out of the former Anbu's grip. Mabui decided to get into a shower and go about her day while living in the house with her master. What she and Naruto had was magic at its finest. And there was no chance in hell she would pass up this. It was a little hard for her to come to grips that you had to walk about the house or in a bikini. But, she was to follow her master's order no matter what. It was only when they left the house were they allowed to put on clothes. Plus, it made sense. As when they were in the house, they were to help Naruto grow the Uzumaki clan. And when your master demands now, making him wait for you to take off your clothes would be a pain. So it was better to just walk about. Or in a bikini. Mabui chose the former option as it would be better to do it like that. Give Naruto what he wants. Meanwhile, Naruto and Kushina were down in the garden, doing what they had been doing ever since the red-haired kidnapped Naruto. Having mind-blowingly awesome, Kushina was right now pinned to a tree. Or more like, laying against a tree. Her nails digging into the tree roots as her was held in the air by her stud of a son. Her eyes rolled into the back of her head as Naruto mercilessly her silly. Damn Ka-chan. You're so tight. Even though I was gone for a few days. You miss me that much? Asked Naruto as he thrusted into her. Yes, Naruto-sama. I missed you. I missed this. I missed your. Now, your Ka-chan. Give me your seed. Give it to me to drink. Begged Kushina as Naruto slapped her again and again. Very well. Take it all. Said Naruto picking up his paces. A few thrusts down the line, Naruto fired his load into Kushina's. Her mind going blank as she took all of her son's cum into her. No matter how many times they did it. This feeling was absolutely amazing. Nothing in the world could compare to the amount of pleasure one felt when they were having. Especially for Kushina. Her son and now carrying his child sent her into an incestual pleasure. Once his loads died down, Naruto moved out of her. Kushina's dropping from the air and Kushina grabbing her son by the hips. Please don't go. She begged. And why should I not go? Queried Naruto looking at his mother. Because. You must still feed me here. Said Kushina pointing at her mouth. Naruto merely smiled as he turned around for her. Fine. Seeing that you did an amazing job of keeping all my cum in you. You can suck me off. Said Naruto. Kushina squealed in delight as she took Naruto's into her mouth. Moaning in pleasure as she bobbed her head back and forth. Naruto merely rested his hands on Kushina's head. Giving himself stability as he watched his mother suck him off. Ka-chan. I have to know. Who is better? Me, or Tu-san? Asked Naruto. You of course. Purred Kushina pulling him out of her mouth. But please. Don't bring him up. Right now. I'm yours. I'm yours to in whichever and wherever way you see fit. There's a good. Said Naruto patting Kushina on the head. Now. Go back to your job. Kushina did as instructed. The only reason why she was rough with Naruto when she previously raped him was because she wanted him to be rough with her. She enjoyed her rough. Yes, she didn't cheat on Minato. But she really wanted to be silly. Sadly, Minato never did that with her. But now that she was back in the world of the living, she had turned her son into a powerful dominating craved demon. Much like her. But he could have with other women. She couldn't have with other men. And honestly, why would she try and break the deal with Kami? Kushina had everything she wanted. A son who her constantly and silly. Other women to keep her stimulated. What else could she possibly want? But Naruto was having none of this. Grabbing Kushina's head, he began to thrust into her mouth. Kushina resigned herself to what her son wanted to do and let him have her way with her mouth. Her eyes soon glazed over as they rolled into the back of her head. Grunts and groans filled the garden as mother and son engaged in a taboo relationship. Here it comes. Drink every drop. Said Naruto as he picked up his paces. Yes. Cum in my mouth. Let me drink all of your cum. Though Kushina as she moaned and sucked lewdly. Grunting as he rammed all inches down her throat, Naruto fired load after load into her mouth. Cum leaked out the corner of her mouth and dropped onto her chest. Giving a content sigh of satisfaction, Naruto released his hands from her head and let Kushina breathe again. Kushina soon used her fingers and scooped up the cum that escaped her mouth. Sucking on her fingers in a rather way. Getting up, she gave her son a kiss on the lips. Thank you for the meal. She purred as she walked off with a sway and limp in her step. Walking also into the house. Naruto got himself cleaned up and got dressed. Today, He and Kushina had to go into Konoha to get some stuff for the house. Just basic necessities was what Kushina called it. But it was more than that in her eyes. Kushina too got dressed and headed with her son to Konoha. "See you when you get home, Naruto-sama," said Mabui bowing to Naruto. "Cool," was all Naruto said as he and Kushina walked away. After a few hours, they made it to Konoha. Many people were rather surprised that Kushina was alive and well. But they didn't know of the deal she and Kami had. Walking around the shops of Konoha, Naruto and Kushina soon stopped by Tsunade's office. Having a quickie, they moved on. But soon bumped into none other than Makoto Uchiha. The Uchiha matriarch was very much surprised as well that Kushina was alive. But she Aslo wondered why she was too. She remembered dying on the night of the Uchiha massacre. But then there was also the deal Kami gave her. And when she saw Naruto, she knew what this deal was. The three of them grabbed a bite to eat and enjoyed each other's company. But soon, afternoon came around and Makoto decided it was time. Grabbing Kushina's and Naruto's hand, she led them to a hotel room. "Makoto-chan, what's going on?" asked Kushina as Makoto locked the door and put up a soundproof barrier. "I know why you are alive, Kushina-chan," stated the MILF Uchiha. "You do?" asked Kushina as her friend nodded her head. "I do. You made a deal with Kami-sama," said Makoto. "How do you know that?" asked Kushina going wide-eyed. "Please. She told me when she resurrected me. She said that you and your son were having right now. And that I was to do the same. By combining the Uchiha and Uzumaki bloodlines, the next generation of our children would be overpowered beyond imagine," exclaimed Makoto as she got to work on her clothes while Naruto and Kushina were already out of theirs. "So, let's do this." Kushina soon gained a gleam in her eyes as she watched her friend's clothes fall to the floor. Without warning, she pushed Naruto onto the bed and began making out with him. "Hey!" snapped Makoto looking at the incestuous act before her. Stopping her makeout session with her son, Kushina looked to her friend while Naruto latched onto her one tit and began to suck on it. While his one hand traveled to begin fingering her. Kushina moaned as she felt son's expert fingers pleasure her. "Well, I was the first one for him. So why don't you sit and watch us?" said Kushina as she went back to making out with her son while her slender fingers traveled down and began to stroke his raging hard-on. Makoto was soon frozen as she watched the scene before her. Every fiber of her mind wanted to stop them so she could ride Naruto till she was in a coma. But her body refused to respond to her wishes. Instead, her one hand traveled down to her wedding and began to finger herself. Kushina looked to the corner of her eye and watched as Makoto played with herself. Deciding to show her friend how a real woman gets someone off, Kushina broke the kiss and got into the 69 position. Giving Naruto's a long and lewd lick, she kept her eyes locked with Makoto's. Taunting her as she pleasured Naruto's. Taking him into her mouth, she began to bob her head back and forth. But soon moaned when she felt Naruto eat her out more. He sure turned into a machine as she blew him. Massaging his balls, trying to make it into a race to see who would come first, she began to increase her paces. Naruto scrunched one eye shut as he felt his hot mother's mouth work his. But he knew why she was doing this. She wanted to make it a race. To show Makoto who was the dominant one in this taboo relationship. But if Naruto knew one thing, it was that he was a fighter. He'd never let this MILF woman try and make him submit. Mother or not, he wouldn't dare break. Thankfully, Naruto won the race and Kushina came into Naruto's mouth while Naruto held back from her. Bringing her mouth off his, Kushina sat on it and stroked him while looking at Makoto with a smile on her face. "This is how a man gets you off," purred Kushina only to be pushed off her son when Naruto sat up. Indeed. But now for your punishment. My of a mother, said Naruto as he looked at both Kushina and Makoto. Makoto soon began to get scared as she looked to Naruto, who had an evil look in his eyes. Like he had this planned all along. Make out with Makoto-chan, ordered Naruto. Kushina did as she was instructed and pounced on the Uchiha, pinning her to the wall. Kushina made out with Makoto while she played with her magnificent orbs. Makoto let off a moan as she felt Kushina play with her body. Slipping her tongue into her mouth, Kushina kissed more feverishly as she ensured Makoto stayed locked in place. Moans filled the room as Naruto watched on as the two women made out in front of him. This was the best thing to ever happen to him. Kami sure gave him a gift. Naruto never liked Sasuke. How he always tried to say he's better than everyone else. So for Naruto to Makoto, Sasuke's mother, was a real increase on his ego. So much that he got up and moved to the two women. Kushina saw her son move to them. Breaking the makeout session between the two, Kushina forced Makoto onto her knees. Such a good, Ka-chan, said Naruto smiling to his mother. Anything for you, Naruto-sama, purred the red-haired. Makoto's eyes widened as she looked at the large rod before her. Never had she seen something so big in her life. Fugaka was only average for his size. But this was like Naruto's was on steroids. Licking her lips as she moved to take him into her mouth, Naruto moved back. Makoto whined at how she didn't get to taste him. Makoto-chan. Behave yourself, said Naruto wagging a finger. Remember, once you belong to Naruto-sama, you will always be his, said Kushina with Naruto nodding his head as he motioned for Kushina to approach him. The mother and son soon began to make out while Naruto inserted 2 fingers into her while Kushina began to jack off her son. Such an incestuous thing that played out before her. Turned on Makoto so much. Without thinking, Makoto dove forward and captured Naruto's in her mouth. Moaning as she sucked on it with so much desperation, Makoto looked up to see the two no longer making out and now looking at her. I knew it, said Kushina moving down to be on her knees as well. You really are begging for someone to you silly. Makoto said nothing as she sucked and slurped on Naruto's, taking as much of his length into her mouth as possible. The pre-cum that leaked out tasted so exotic. It began to make her feel she may end up addicted to it. Kushina soon took Naruto's balls into her mouth, sucking on them while her hands began to play with Makoto's body, pinching and twisting her mounds as she licked her son's sack. What did I do to deserve such a sight? Moaned Naruto as he stroked the two women's heads. Moving to be sitting on the bed, Naruto soon began to thrust into Makoto's mouth. This made Makoto stop her actions and resign to her fate as Naruto thrusted into her mouth. Such a you are, Makoto-chan, said Naruto as he thrusted harder and faster. Your friend's son as if it were nothing. She always wanted to do this, stated Kushina as she got up and sat on the bed. Only to pin her son down and straddle his face. Please, Naruto-sama, begged Kushina, parting her lips, giving her what she wanted. Naruto grabbed Kushina's thighs and plunged her down onto his tongue. Kushina moaned in pleasure as she felt her son's tongue move about in her cavern. She soon began to grind herself on her son's face, bringing on her own release as she gripped the sheets to stabilize herself. The feeling she was having was so incredible, she didn't want it to end. But sadly, it was coming to an end. Her movements soon became erratic and she began to grind herself harder on Naruto's face. Naruto-sama, I'm so close, moaned Kushina as she began to pant from the pleasure she was having. Naruto could feel his release growing as well. Makoto wasn't as skilled as swallowing up his whole like with Samui and Kushina. But man did she know how to suck and the way she moaned and slurped made it that much harder. But sadly, both Naruto and Kushina came then and there. Naruto drinking Kushina's cum while Makoto drank up Naruto's. She swallowed everything presented to her, taking in the flavor and sweet aroma of her new lover's cum. Once she was done sucking on his, Makoto pulled her head off and licked her lips while Kushina got off Naruto's face. Delicious, purred Makoto as she stood up. Kushina moved away from her son as she looked to Makoto. Seeing that she may end up riding her son, she planned on having Naruto eat her out again. But she didn't expect Naruto to move behind Makoto and push her onto the bed. Her perfect in the air. Grabbing the MILF's full hips, Naruto began to play with her as he tapped the shaft of his on each of her cheeks. Makoto moaned as she felt the large piece of man hitting her cheeks. She looked behind her, her eyes glazed with lust and want. Please. I want it so bad. She begged as she began to grind her hips against Naruto. What is the proper words you should use? Said Naruto as he began to jack off. I'm sorry. I meant, Naruto-sama. Said Makoto, her eyes begging for Naruto to start her. Very well. I'll let that slide. Said Naruto as he positioned his at her wet entrance. Pushing himself into her, Naruto and Kushina watched as Makoto threw her head back as her back arched from the feeling of being filled up. Smirking at this, Naruto began to slowly thrust. Kushina saw a golden opportunity to get off as well. Climbing onto the bed and getting in front of Makoto's face, she grabbed the raven-haired MILF's head. Lick! Ordered Kushina. Makoto was lost in a haze of lust as she looked at her red-haired friends dripping. She dove straight in. Kushina threw her head back as she moaned in pleasure as she felt Makoto's tongue move about in her cavern. Looking to her son, Kushina gave him a wink as she began to play with her tits. You're next, said Naruto, increasing his speed as he pounded Makoto. Ah, yes. Me Naruto-sama. I am yours. I belong to you. Every inch of my body is yours to play with. Me. Defile me. Turn me into your whore. Moaned Makoto as Naruto continued to Sasuke's mother. I plan on it. I will you so hard that you'll be begging me to you every time you see me. Groaned Naruto as he picked up his pace more. Yes ss. I belong to you. I am yours. Cried Makoto only to have her head shoved back to be at Kushina's. I never said you were done. Hissed Kushina. Naruto could feel how tight Makoto was. It was nearly the same tightness as Kushina when they first had. Even though he was controlled then, he could still feel how tight his mother was. Reaching under her, Naruto pulled Makoto from Kushina and began to power thrust into her as he fondled her jugs. Kushina moaned in disappointment for not having her stimulation, but settled on moving to where her son and Makoto were connected, and began to lick and nibble on her. That did it for Makoto, and she came then and there. She cried out as her eyes rolled into the back of her head. Naruto too felt his release growing and fired into Makoto's womb, filling her up as he held onto her. Seeing a bit of the cum her son shot leak out of Makoto's, Kushina licked it all up, tasting the sweet taste of her son along with Makoto. His loads died out and Naruto pulled out of Makoto. The Uchiha MILF dropped onto the bed, her mind blank as she shook from the feeling of being filled up. Kushina smirked at what her son did and how easy it was for Makoto to break. You were always so weak when it came to, said Kushina as she grabbed Naruto's rock hard and led him to a wall. This is how you should properly, said Kushina, giving her sons a few strokes before giving him a peck on the lips. Moving her hands to be on the wall, Kushina wagged her before Naruto. Me hard, said Kushina as she licked her lips. With pleasure, said Naruto as he thrusted himself into Kushina, hard and rough. The red-haired MILF threw her head back as she moaned as she felt her son move in and out of her. her tits bouncing and swinging around as she felt her son her hard. What I have for a mother. You should be punished for that, said Naruto, giving his mother a few slaps on the. Yes. I'm a naughty MILF. A toy for my stud son. I need to be punished, cried Kushina as she felt her son's speed inside her, giving her a few more slaps. Naruto grew tired of this position and spun her around. Pinning her against the wall, Naruto began to thrust harder than ever. Kushina wrapped her arms and legs around him as she cried in pleasure. Biting and nibbling his neck, Kushina moaned in bliss as Naruto grunted and groaned as his mother. Here it comes. Take it all, said Naruto. Yes. Give me it all. Give me your cum, cried Kushina as she bounced on her son's pelvis. Giving a few more powerful thrusts, Naruto unloaded into Kushina's waiting, filling her up with his hot cum. The red-haired MILF threw her head back and cried out a powerful orgasm as she felt his cum enter her. A few loads later, Naruto pulled out of her and turned to find Makoto coming back to her senses. Seeing that Kushina was slightly done, Naruto pulled out of his mother and moved to the raven-haired Uchiha. Seems you want more, said Naruto as Makoto looked to see him still hard. How much stamina do you have? Questioned Makoto. Too much it would seem, said Naruto as Makoto shrugged her shoulders and lay on the bed. Please. Me more? She asked. Climbing on top of her, Naruto glided his hands over her body. Makoto shuddered at the touch as Naruto trailed them down until he reached her folds. So wet, said Naruto as he dragged a finger over her lips. I want it so bad, was all Makoto could say. Well then, let's get busy, said Naruto, grabbing Makoto's hips and pushing himself into her. Makoto threw her head back as she felt him move deeper into her. Ah, yes. That feels good, said Makoto as Naruto began to thrust into her. You shall be mine forever. Taking my cum whenever I ask of it, said Naruto as he thrust into Makoto with vigor. I understand. I am your cumdump, to be used in whichever way you deem necessary, moaned Makoto as she dragged her nails over Naruto's back. The two continued to each other with renewed strength, the bed shaking and creaking as they moved atop the bed, threatening to give way as the two made love with one another. Makoto had never experienced so much pleasure in her life. Fugaku was always so gentle and wonderful to her. But she wanted what Kushina too desired. To be hard in every way possible. Feeling the young stud on top of her, currently nursing on her tits, she felt like the key to her lock had been found. After all these years, it was amazing. Naruto continued to the horny MILF. For some reason, apart from Koyuki, the women that always desired him were older than him. I mean, his first was with a woman older than him. And yes, that woman was his mother. But who cares? Bringing his mouth from her tit, Naruto bit down on Makoto's neck, leaving hickeys all along her smooth flesh. And at that moment, he felt a familiar pressure build up. Inside. Come inside. I want your children. I want them so badly, begged Makoto. Take it all, grunted Naruto, burying his entire into her. Naruto-sama, cried Makoto as she gave an earth-shaking orgasm. Makoto-chan, cried Naruto as he filled her up with his cum. After a full minute, Naruto pulled out of Makoto and watched her sleep. Only 2 sessions and she was out cold. Man, she was weak. He had to train her to stay awake through more. Looking over to his mother, Naruto found the red-haired getting off the floor and looking to her son while she licked her lips. Wanna me again? She purred. You better be ready, said Naruto as he moved to her. The next morning, Makoto woke up in the bed with both Naruto and Kushina. Currently, Makoto was pulled against Naruto's back while Naruto had Kushina in his arms, currently spooning her. The two woke up shortly after her and they all got dressed. But not before having amazing in the shower. Once they were dressed, they paid for their stay at the inn and left via Shunshin to Naruto's and Kushina's house. There they found Tsunade tapping her foot as she glared at Naruto. "Where were you? I desperately need you to me again," she spat. "Fine. Let's go," said Naruto, leaving the two women and grabbing Tsunade's hand and dragging her to a room. Kushina went over the rules for living in the house. And Makoto agreed to them. Finding Mabui, Samui and Yugao in the house as well, they all waited outside Naruto's room while Tsunade howled in pleasure as her world was rocked as Naruto pounded her into oblivion. It had been a week since Makoto had become Naruto's property to do with what he desired. And she wouldn't have it any other way. When Fugaku was still alive, the only time he'd be intimate with her was to just impregnate her with Sasuke and Itachi. But that all changed when she decided to live with Naruto. As of right now, another group orgy was taking place as the occupants of the house in the mountains were going at it like there was no tomorrow. Makoto was still rather surprised that Naruto was able to her until she passed out. But he still her silly while she was passed out. When she came back to reality, she woke up to find her covered in cum. She looked like a ghost. You also couldn't see the bed from the amount of cum Naruto dumped onto and into her. Currently, many Naruto clones litter the bedroom. 4 clones were currently having their way with Kushina. Her holes filled while she jacked off the 4th. Yugao had 2, Samui and Mabui had 3 while Tsunade, who showed up in time, had only 2 as well. While the original was having a field day with Makoto. The raven-haired Uchiha MILF was currently on her back, her in the air while Naruto her beyond imagine. Her juices and his cum leaked out, her overly filled as she lay there. A rather expression on her face as Naruto rammed himself deep into her. Clearly he marked his territory when he took her when he and Kushina went to Konoha. But now he was just using her as a cum-dump. "You like that, huh?" barked Naruto, pistoning in and out of her at insane force. I do so much, Naruto-sama. I am yours. I'm your whore, your cum-dump. I belong to you. My mouth, my tits, they all belong to you. I am yours. I will give birth to your children. The Uchiha clan is dead to me. All that matters is satisfying you," screamed Makoto as her eyes rolled into her head as her tongue hung out her mouth. "Excellent. Now take it all," shouted Naruto as he unleashed another batch of his hot cum into her womb, making her belly swell up to look like she was 2 months pregnant. The others soon climaxed as the clones too came into the various women. Looking at their expressions as they lay there, Naruto smiled at his handiwork. Clearly they were all lusting after the item in his pants. But he still felt there was no one out there who could match his godly stamina. His mother had proven to last more longer than the others. But she would succumb to his after the 5th round and pass out. He was really hoping to find someone who could match him. Or even surpass him. It was crying shame really. But as he lamented on who to next, Tsunade came over to him and began to suck his. Cleaning the pole of his cum and Makoto's juices. Once he was clean, Tsunade removed her mouth from his. "I have another mission for you," purred Tsunade, licking her lips as she grabbed her jugs and began to him. "What?" asked Naruto, feeling the soft melons on his. "I need you to deliver a message to Mai Terumi, Mizukage of Kurigakure," said Tsunade, occasionally licking what didn't fit between her tits. "Is that all?" asked Naruto. "Sure is," said Tsunade, only to have Naruto behind her and his poking her unused rosebud. "Good. When do I leave?" asked Naruto as he continued to poke her asshole. "You leave tomorrow at 3. Cried Tsunade as Naruto roughly entered her anus and began to her. By the time morning came around, Tsunade limped out the house and moved back to Konoha. Clearly Naruto broke her, again. But when the time for Naruto to leave, he found the letter he needed to deliver laying on the table. Having a quickie with the women, he left. It wasn't long until he was in Kiri. Much had changed since the Shinobi War. The village was doing surprisingly well. Marching to Mei's office, Naruto kicked the door in to find the auburn-haired goddess working on her paperwork. "There is a thing called knocking," said Mei, clearly irritated. "Don't care," said Naruto arrogantly. "Special delivery." Throwing the letter onto the desk, he watched Mei read it. Her eyes occasionally darting to Naruto as she continued to read. And Naruto could swear he saw her lick her lips. Just what was the middle-aged vixen thinking? Blasphemy! Snapped Mei, throwing the letter onto the desk as she folded her arms. "What's wrong?" asked Naruto. "I don't agree to these terms," hissed Mei. Taking a hold of the letter, Naruto began to read it. When he was done, he found nothing wrong with it. It absolutely favored both sides. So what was the problem? "What's the problem?" asked Naruto. "Everything," responded Mei, glaring at the blonde. "I still don't see the problem," stated Naruto, only for Mei to huff at what he said. "It says nothing in there about me having with you," stated Mei, only for Naruto to be dumbfounded. "That's all you're mad about?" questioned Naruto, with Mei nodding. "Damn right. I want to have my fun time with you. But I can't," said Mei, only for Naruto to gain a gleam in his eyes. "They don't need to find out," he said to her, with Mei also gaining a gleam in her eyes. "I like your thinking, young man. Follow me," said Mei, getting up and walking out her office, a sway in her hips, with Naruto's eyes staying glued to her lush rump, imagining that hitting his pelvis as she rode him while screaming his name. The very idea caused him to grow a massive hard-on. Mei saw this in the corner of her eye. Licking her lips as she finally reached her room, she opened the door and pushed Naruto into the room. Locking the door, she found Naruto already sitting on the bed. Clearly he was ready for this. So why not give him a show, was what Mei thought. Moving to be before him, she began to give him a show of a lifetime. Making sure her actions were as lewd as possible, she began to strip. Her blue dress first fell, leaving her in her fishnet under armor while she began to run her hands over her chest and stomach. "Does Mini Naruto love this?" she asked in a purr, her eyes staying glued to his. "It's not that Mini," barked Naruto. Licking her lips at the thought, Mei continued her strip tease, and once her clothes were fully off her, she sashayed over to the bed and got onto her knees. Unzipping his pants, she marveled at what came flying out. He really wasn't that Mini. The very thought of having this split her in half was making her more wetter by the second. Pumping him a few times, she licked her lips before planting a kiss on the head. "I hope you can tame me," said Mei as she started to lick the shaft. "I've tamed 7 women. But the question is, can you tame me?" challenged Naruto. "I don't care," said Mei, taking his into her mouth. Moaning as she started slow, she bobbed her head up and down his length. The very thing was so big she had trouble at first, but became easier as she began to really bob her head. The head hitting the back of her throat and hitting her gag reflex every time. Naruto merely sat there, watching the busty Mizukage suck him off. Even though his full length wasn't in her throat where he wanted it, he could see she was trying. So he allowed her to get used to his. There was always another time to make her his cumdump. Mei was definitely doing her best. Feeling such a in her mouth was beyond her understanding. She sucked a slurped, tasting the pre-cum that leaked out his. He tasted so good. She feared she may be addicted to this taste. But soon, Naruto felt his release growing. Pushing his down her throat and past her gag reflex, Mei felt the first wave of hot cum flow down her throat. "Savor it," ordered Naruto as Mei continued to drink. Tears flowed down her cheeks as she downed every shot of cum. She wasn't crying due to the force of Naruto or the lack of oxygen. Oh no. It was the taste of a man that flooded down her throat that brought on these tears. He tasted so exotic. A perfect balance between bitter and sweet. Once Naruto's loads died out, Mei was finally able to remove her mouth from his. Licking her lips, she smiled as she stood up. Delicious. So good. She purred as she slid her right leg to the side of Naruto. But I want to taste it down here, said Mei, opening her lips as she brushed the head against her. She shuddered from the feeling as she laid her other leg on the other side of Naruto. Grabbing her hips, Naruto slammed her onto his. Mei's back arched as she moaned in pleasure as she felt the head push up into her womb. Naruto didn't even feel any form of barrier. But he didn't care. Now was the time to make this woman his. Time to make her submissive to his. With this thought in mind, Naruto grabbed her hips and began to move her on his. Mei threw her head back as she felt Naruto's move inside her tight cunt. Her growing wetter and wetter every time the head pushed into her womb. Her juices flowing out her and coating Naruto's shaft as she rode him to oblivion. Watching her amazing tits bounce in front of his face, Naruto took one of her melons into his mouth while his one hand left her and kneaded the other. Mei could only throw her head back as she screamed in pleasure. Ah, yes. That's good. It feels so good. Me hard, moaned the busty cage as she began to pick up her pace as she bounced on Naruto's pelvis. The sounds of flesh hitting flesh rang in the room as Mei Naruto. But she knew at this rate, she would be into a induced coma. But she didn't care. All she cared about right now was to be used however Naruto wished. Breaking from her one tit, Naruto moved to the other and nursed off her. Her milk flowing into his mouth allowing his to drink from her. He drank from Kushina a few times when they rutted between the sheets. But for him to do it with another, sent him into an instinctual climax. His balls soon began to tighten which made his pace became erratic. Thrusting harder into Mei, Naruto removed his mouth from her tit, looking at her face to become distorted as she held her head back as Naruto drove it home. Here it comes, groaned Naruto as Mei shook her head in ecstasy. I know. I'm gonna come too. Inside me. I want it inside me. I want to feel it inside me, moaned Mei as she too picked up her paces. A few more thrusts later, Naruto unleashed all the cum he had built up into Mei's womb, filling her up to the brim as she screamed in pleasure while pushing Naruto's head between her tits, keeping his secured as her walls squeezed all the cum out his. When his loads died out, Mei breathed a sigh of relief and contentness as she slowly got off Naruto. His cum dripping out her and forming a puddle on the floor. Bringing a finger, she ran it over her lips and lapped some of the cum that wasn't inside her. So good. She purred only to be slammed against the wall as Naruto picked up her legs and positioned himself at her entrance again. I never said I was done with you, smirked Naruto. Ravish me, moaned Mei as she felt his enter her again. Digging her nails into his back, Mei moaned in pleasure as Naruto kept thrusting into her. The cum inside her sloshing around in her as she felt Naruto rock her core. Her eyes soon began to roll into the back of her head as her tongue fell out her mouth. Smiling as he looked at her features again, Naruto inwardly nodded. He had just made another woman his. Another woman who will be used as his toy. You like that, Mei? Huh? You like it? Groaned Naruto thrusting into her. Yes. I love it, Naruto-sama. I love it to death, moaned Mei as she placed her head against the wall. I can't hear you, bitch, said Naruto slamming himself harder into her. Speak louder, or I will pull out. Slowly, Naruto began to withdraw his from her. But Mei locked him in place with her legs. No. Don't pull it out. I need it. I need it so badly, begged Mei. Then tell me what I want to hear. Order Naruto, staying idle while Mei began to grind her hips against his. I need it. I need your. I want it so bad. I am your. Cried Mei on the top of her lungs. Excellent, said Naruto, ramming himself back into her. Yes. That's good. Me, you stud. I am your whore. Your cumdump, cried Mei as Naruto began to pick up speed. I like your tone. Now take my load, you whore, said Naruto, thrusting up and dumping another batch of hot cum into her filled womb. I feel it. Your cum is filling me. I am nothing but your toy. I am your property, cried Mei as she felt his cum inside her. We're not even done yet, cackled Naruto, throwing her onto the bed with him moving behind her. Me hard, begged Mei, grinding her hips against Naruto's pelvis. Naruto merely grabbed her cheeks and spread them, opening up her more to him. I'll you how I want to, snapped Naruto, roughly entering her again. The force of the rough entry sent Mei's face into the pillows as she moaned into the pillows as she felt him once more inside her. He was such a man. More than she could handle. He had came 4 times and he was still going strong. Just how much stamina did this guy have? Or how much cum could he produce was her second question. But her thoughts turned white as Naruto hoisted her up to have her back against his front as he began to knead her. Mei merely threw her hands into the air with her fingers intertwining before moving to have them behind her head. Her face had the silly expression as Naruto pistoned in and out of her. Good. She slurred, struggling to form words in her dazed mind. Why good? She slurred more. What's good? Spit it out, bitch, said Naruto as he increased his pace. It's good. It's really good, cried Mei, only to be facing Naruto as he rode him more. Her nails digging into his back more, only to drag across his back as she rode him harder and faster, drawing blood as she gazed into space while riding the blonde stud. Naruto soon felt his release growing as Mei continued to ride his. It was now official. He broke her. She was his for life. Ooh. Yeah, cried Naruto as he felt her walls tighten like a vice grip around his. And soon enough, Mei's hands moved to his hair as she leaned back while riding Naruto like a stallion. She had never imagined to be so hard in her life. Her dildo she used at night never came close to the real deal. Especially with one so much bigger than her dildo. She soon felt Naruto's swell within her, and just like that, she screamed in pleasure as Naruto fired his 4th load into her. Mei's body went rigid as she pulled out some of Naruto's hair as she orgasmed so hard it vibrated against the walls and bounced everywhere. Naruto held her close as he continued to dump his cum into her overly stuffed. Feeling how good her walls clamped down hard on his. This was the first time Naruto had felt a woman squeeze his so tight. Mei soon passed out as she fell backwards onto the bed. Her mind blank, her leaking cum like a river as she just lay there. His now limp and him now bored again. Getting dressed, Naruto pulled the overs over her and moved to the door. I had fun. Next time, said Naruto, leaving the room and leaving Kiri. Oh Naruto-kun, when mating season is here, you and I will not only shake the earth but the heavens as well. Just 3 weeks left and then you can feel what a demoness can do, chirped Kyuubi within his head. The following days after Naruto broke Mei in, Konoha got a response from Kiri that they accepted the terms and conditions and that Mei had stepped down and allowed her bodyguard out to take the mantle of Mizukage. Everyone was oblivious to why Mei stepped down, but for the women who were of Naruto's possession, they knew why. Mei lived with Naruto ever since he broke her in and would always fulfill her duties as his cumbucket. She was so broken, Yugao looked sane when she went at it with Naruto the first time. Yup. Life was good for Naruto right now. Sitting on the couch as a new morning dawned over the elemental nations, Naruto sat in the since the day he was born. Even though the rule stated for living in the house, one must wear either a bikini, that had to be in revealing, or just full on. This rule still applied to him. Of course, he came up with this rule in the first place. So he had to adhere to his own rules. Or else it won't be fair game. Kushina, Mabui, Samui, Makoto and Yugao were busy wafting about in the kitchen, their stomachs slightly bloated from the amount of cum Naruto dumped into them last night. Though with Kushina, the incest addict looked to be more than a month pregnant. They were currently getting breakfast ready. But they were missing one. An auburn-haired busty ex-Mizukage. Oh, that's right. Right between Naruto's legs, her head bobbing up and down as she sucked and slurped with all her might and crazed desires, Mei serviced her master's pole. Her eyes glazed with lust and pure desire as she sucked him off. Running a hand through her hair, Naruto smiled smug-like as he watched the woman suck him off. Good Mei-chan. Good. You're proving to be better at this than Mabui was at her first time, commented Naruto as Mei pulled him out her mouth. Your words honor me, Naruto-sama. She purred only to have her face shoved back down to suck him off. Finish your food first before talking to me, barked Naruto. Mei never responded with a snappy remark. Instead she moaned as she continued to suck him off with great vigor. But Naruto soon felt his balls clench and he thrust it into Mei's mouth, firing his load into her mouth and down her throat. Mei moaned in pleasure as she took all his cum into her throat, drinking the quantity in large gulps as she savored the flavor of the addicting drink she enjoyed so much. Once Naruto's was clean of cum, she pulled her mouth from his and licked her lips. Thank you for the meal. She purred. Whatever, said Naruto moving up the stairs to the shower. Once he was done, he got dressed and headed out the door. He'd be heading over to Tsunade's office for some reason. And he knew why she wanted to see him. For a nice quickie in her office it would seem. Once he arrived, he Tsunade hard enough to make her have a limp in her strides for 3 days. But now he was hungry. Hungry not for ramen. For something more better. Deciding to try and calm down his hard-on, he headed about the village. But as he walked he soon felt his senses shoot up as he felt Kyuubi push her chakra into his nose. And it just so happened that he was walking past the Inuzuka compound. And it was this smell that he knew all too well. It was the smell of pheromones. And they were strong. So strong, Naruto found himself walking into the compound and to where he was smelling the pheromones. Entering the compound, he heard the sounds of someone moaning in pleasure as the smell was more stronger inside than outside. Walking up the steps, he found a door that was slightly open. Peeking inside, he found the most incredible sight. Kiba's very own mother, Sume Inuzuka, was laying on the bed. As she was the day she was born. Her one hand playing with her one while the other was rubbing her wet. Her moans were music and Naruto could feel his hard-on growing from the show. Just watching her drove him to claim her. Such beautiful sounds flying from her lips made him hungry for her. Kiba took Hinata away from him. He took that which didn't belong to him. So it was only right for him to return the favor. And he was going to do it in the best way he knew. This horny woman raw like there was no tomorrow. Getting ready, he kicked down the door, making poor Sume scramble about while trying to hide her body. Her eyes gazing upon Naruto's own blue eyes. Naruto-kun, what are you doing here? Asked Sume. Oh, I was in the neighborhood. And I thought maybe I should come and see how the great Sume Inuzuka was doing, said Naruto smiling to her, clearly baiting her. Ah, you're sweet. Flattery always worked on me, said Sume looking to him while a blush swept across her cheeks. I won't lie, you're so beautiful. In fact, you're gorgeous, said Naruto, making his way to the bed and sitting down next to Sume. Keep this up, and I may make you the new head of the Inuzuka, commented Sume. I believe any man would be glad to have you. You're smart, beautiful, and extremely talented. You're the whole package, stated Naruto, running his hands over Sume's skin. From an outsider's view, it would looking just like a simple touch. But from Naruto's point of view, he was touching all the spots that would make a woman extremely horny. He very much had to thank his mother when he got back. And he'd do it in the best way he knew. Sume's body began to burn up. The way Naruto was touching her was sending her over the edge. She had never been touched since her husband died, and here was a man that was nearly half her age, making her feel good once again. But this felt way better than her husband. His expert touch electrocuted her senses that were long since dead awake. His fingers probing her desires as they ran effortlessly across her smooth skin. But, I guess I should get back to what I was doing, said Naruto, adding the final piece of bait to the hook he had out waiting. Ninja are always on the move. Wait, said Sume, grabbing Naruto's hand. Inwardly smiling at how she took the bait and fell for it, hook, line, and sinker, Naruto sat back on the bed. Sume-sama, I must get back to my duties, said Naruto, with Sume shrugging her shoulders as she leaned against him, enticing him with her D-cup. Please, Naruto-kun, stay for a bit longer. With me, begged Sume as she looking up into his eyes. Oh, alright, said Naruto, only to inwardly high-five himself as Sume latched her lips onto his own. Pushing himself on top of her, their lips staying glued to each other's as they made out. Naruto soon began to grind his groin against her inner thigh as their tongues danced in each other's mouths. Sume moaned as she felt the stiff member against her thigh. She couldn't believe what she was doing. She was making out with a man younger than her. And on top of that, they were about to screw each other like no other. The mere thought made her exceedingly wet beyond imagine. Breaking the kiss, Sume threw Naruto off her and instantly grabbed onto his pants, stopping for a minute while looking to the man she was about to sleep with. Her eyes instantly glazed over with lust as she unzipped his pants. Can you tame a woman like me? She purred as she pulled down his pants to reveal the large bulge in his boxers even more. Trust me, I've tamed women tougher than you, retorted Naruto, with Sume licking her lips as she pulled down his boxers to reveal his large. I like the sounds of that, she said as she gave the hole a lick. Naruto merely watched, occasionally groaning as the brown-haired MILF licked his, ensuring the whole thing was properly lubricated for her mouth. The shone in the light of the ceiling light. Sume was proud of her handiwork, only to grab her tits and bring them over his. Naruto had been before by May, but she was too desperate for him to pay attention to the small details. But Sume was clearly showing that she wanted this to last. She wanted to experience all of him. Naruto respected that. Playing with what stuck between her tits and licking what didn't, Sume could feel how hard he was. He wanted this. He needed this. And the way she was acting, she also wanted this so badly. She had been deprived for so long that she needed to have someone her brains out. Naruto soon took the reins on this whole thing and grabbed Sume's hair and forced all inches down her throat. Sume gagged for a bit but welcomed it. She was planning on teasing him for a bit longer, but she wanted to be like a bitch in heat. And for Naruto to make such an advance on her, was exactly what she needed. Holding onto his thighs as Naruto worked his hips, Sume felt the head of his push past the back of her mouth and down her throat. She enjoyed it so much, she moved one hand from Naruto's thigh to her soaked and began to finger herself. You like that, said Naruto as he thrust it into Sume's mouth. Sume did nothing other than gaze upon her new lover, enjoying how her mouth. She soon began to suck on it, contracting her throat as much as she could while ensuring to lap up the pre-cum that fell from the head. It tasted delicious. But she was caught off guard when Naruto began to thrust harder and faster into her mouth. Sum-chan, I'm gonna cum, said Naruto as he sped up more. Be sure to swallow it all. Sum welcomed the feeling as Naruto unloaded his cum into her mouth and down her throat. She moaned as she felt it slither down her throat and into her stomach. The taste was so exotic and delicious she was hooked then and there. Pulling his out her mouth with a popping sound after a few minutes, she was hit in the face with a few ropes of stray cum. Licking her fingers in a way, taking the cum from her face and into her mouth where she swallowed, she gazed at him to find him still hard. Delicious, Naruto-sama. I am yours to play with. She cooed as she lay on her back and spread her legs. Don't mind if I do, chimed Naruto, climbing onto the bed and positioning his at her wet entrance. Thrusting himself in, he listened to her pained and pleasure-filled cries as Naruto continued to push himself into her. Damn Sum-chan, you're so tight, grunted Naruto as he continued to push himself into her. I've not had for a long time. But that changes now. Please, she trailed as she panted from being filled up. Me hard. I need it so bad. I want this so bad. I'll be your for life. That's what I was going for, stated Naruto, finally getting all of his into her warm. Starting slow, Naruto began to the Inuzuka MILF with a strong rhythm. Looking at the show under him as he began his conquest of yet another for him to enjoy and play with, Naruto watched as her tits bounced from the impact created from their lower halves. Reaching down, her took one tit into his mouth as he began to pick up his paces. Sum threw her arms around his neck, her sight was white, her mind blank, but the pleasure was all that remained. She held on for dear life, feeling his deep inside her, hitting all the spots that were once to be believed dead. But that was proved wrong when Naruto shoved his into her. But they were not alone. Hana Inuzuka, first child of Sum, had arrived home right after Naruto had put his into Sum and came to the hearing of her mother crying in pleasure. Making her way up the stairs, she found her mother's door to be slightly open. She looked inside and her jaw instantly hit the floor. What she was definitely her mother. But with some other man. And that man was Naruto. Her mother in the missionary position. But that wasn't all she saw. It was also the larger than average that was being thrusted into Sum. Hana couldn't believe her mother was a younger man, but she instantly became fixated on Naruto's. It was so huge she felt her grow wet and her mouth began water. There was no denying it now. She was hungry for his. She wanted his in her. Scratch that. With a like that, she'd become his, producing his children and being hard for the rest of her life. With that thought in her mind, she left with silence in her steps and set to work on a plan for having Naruto to herself. Sum had never felt pleasure like this in her life. Ever. Her past husband only was ever intimate with her in order to produce Hana and Kiba. Kami rest his soul. But she never was able to truly be satisfied in the department. She promised to remain faithful to him even in death. But that was destroyed when Naruto showed up. Feeling this young stud's hit her spots every time gave her such a thrill beyond image. She could already feel her mind going blank as Naruto continued his assault on her. Her juices leaking out and splashing onto the bed as she held Naruto close to her. Her cries of pleasure and his grunts as he thrusted into her filled the room as Naruto her silly. You like that, huh Sum-chan? You like me, you're like a bitch in heat. Groaned Naruto as he felt Sum's nails dig into his back. Yes. I love it. I love it so much. You're truly a man worthy of that of yours. You're so deep inside me. Me hard. Me raw. Me however you want. Cried Sum as she locked her legs behind Naruto, securing him in place, unable to allow him escape. How about letting me impregnate you? How does that sound? Barked Naruto, driving himself harder into Sume. A cry of pleasure ripped from her lips as she arched her back and squeezed Naruto close to her chest. It sounds amazing. Treat me like I am your. Come inside me. Come inside me to bear your children. I want your cum so bad. Moaned Sume. Here it comes. Groaned Naruto, thrusting himself deeper into her womb and unloaded his cum into her waiting womb. Sume howled in pleasure as she had her first legit orgasm in what felt like an eternity. Her walls clamping down on Naruto's as he fired continuously. After a full minute of coming, Naruto pulled out of her. A bit of cum falling onto the bed as Sume breathed a sigh of relief. Noticing Naruto's was still hard, she licked her lips and got onto her hands and knees. Using one hand to open her up, she presented her to Naruto. More please. She begged, wagging her in front of Naruto. Licking his lips at how easy it was to make her submit to him, Naruto placed a hand on her glorious and the other on his. Pushing the head in slowly, teasing her as he entered her confines once more, he watched Sume moan at how her new toy was filling her up. But she didn't like the teasing Naruto was giving her. She wanted to be hard, not teased into submission. Slamming her against his pelvis, she moaned as she felt the entire inside her again. Looking to him, she licked her lips. I want to be like the I have become, she demanded. Very well. All you like there is no tomorrow, said Naruto as he began to Sume once more. The force of the impact from Naruto's thrust pushed Sume onto the bed where her head collided with the pillows. Her moans drowned by the pillow as Naruto her hard, bringing herself up as the bed began to rock and creak. Sume's eyes rolled into the back of her head with her tongue hanging out her mouth. Clearly this was what Naruto wanted. And frankly, she needed it with the way she was acting. Damn Sume-chan. You're even tighter in this position. You must have been born cooed Naruto as he thrusted harder into her. I am a born for your. I love it. I love it so much. I want you. I need you. I need you to me so hard as to how I want it. Moaned Sume as Naruto grabbed her swaying tits and began to pick up his paces. The bed groaning and straining from the rough given. The screws threatening to give way as the two each other into oblivion. Sume-kn knew there was no turning back now. She was now a to Naruto. That was to fulfill her master's desires to the fullest. But Naruto soon began to pick up the pace and began to her even more harder. Sume screamed as Naruto drove it home. Her walls clamping down hard on his as she began to slip in and out of consciousness. I'm coming. I'm coming. Moaned Sume as she rocked back and forth from Naruto's motions. Here it comes. Take it all. Groaned Naruto as he grabbed her to drive it even harder. Yes. Yes. Give it to me. Give me your seed. Give me your child. I want it so bad. I love you. I love you so much. Cried Sume as Naruto continued to her hard. I'm coming. Groaned Naruto, firing his load into the Inuzuka matriarch. Sume cried in pleasure as she arched her back from being filled. Her mind had officially broke. Her had never felt so much pleasure. With his loads dying out, Naruto pulled out of Sume and watched her fall onto the bed, her panted breaths now the only sound in the room. But as he was about to grab his boxers, he felt a pair of slender arms wrap around him. Come back in me more. Cooed Sume as she gave his ear a lick. I promise to you hard next time, said Naruto with Sume passing out. Finally getting dressed, Naruto headed out the door and out the Inuzuka compound. A smile on his face as he went about his day like nothing ever happened. Another woman claimed. Another woman now his incumbent. But then he began to think. Sume had another child, Hana Inuzuka. Smiling at how it would be amazing to have her as well as his, he saved the objective for tomorrow. Yes, tomorrow he will turn her into his. But as he walked out the Inuzuka compound, he failed to notice the one who stole Hinata from him. Kiba Inuzuka. He was currently hiding as he watched Naruto leave his home. His face distorted in horror as he watched Naruto leave. He arrived home shortly after Hana and wanted to tell his mother that Hinata and him were going to have a child. But he decided against it when he watched Naruto and Tsume like there was no tomorrow. Ka-san. How could you? Cried Kiba as a tear dropped from his eye. It had been only 3 days since Naruto returned to Konoha to add more hot women, preferably MILFs, to his harem. He already had 9 women who were his property. His mother included. Sure, incest was wrong, but when you want a bloodline to stay pure, you do that sort of thing. Plus, the child born will be of pure blood while the other children will be half-blood. Naruto didn't care. As long as he could have, he was happy. Tsume was only the latest in the long list of women too. Next was Hana, then Kurenai, followed by Anko, Ayame, Ino, Shizune, Yoshino and last but not least, Hitomi. Hinata's mother. He already got back at Sasuke by Makoto to where he broke her. Neji was okay, so he'd not take Tenten. Currently, Naruto and Tsume were going at it like there was no tomorrow. Tsume had already renounced her title as head of the Inuzuka. This was met with shock and unrest as many wanted to know her reason. Tsume merely stated she wanted to be more at home. Well, that was her response. But her real motive was to have with Naruto whenever she could. Yes. Yes. Like that. Me hard, me raw. Me however you want. Cried Tsume as Naruto rammed himself from behind her. Giving the Inuzukas a few slaps as he plowed her, Naruto was awarded with a few moans of pleasure as Tsume arched her back from the pleasure. Oh, I like that. Treat me like the I am. Moaned Tsume, making Naruto smile at her words. So Tsume-chan. Started Naruto as he continued to her. Are you ready to become pregnant and bring my clan back into existence? Tsume merely hung her head as her moans grew into screams as her eyes rolled into the back of her head as her tongue hung out her mouth. Yesh, I read she show beshom preshnit. Yes, I'm ready to become pregnant, she moaned as Naruto picked up his pace. Good. Now take my load and bring my children into the world, groaned Naruto, firing his load into Tsume's warm. Tsume threw her head back as she climaxed from feeling Naruto's cum fill her womb. After a few more thrusts and dumping his cum into Tsume, Naruto pulled out of her with Tsume throwing herself onto her back as she breathed a sigh of content and satisfaction as she rubbed her stomach as she felt Naruto's warm cum in her womb. I love you, said Tsume, falling asleep. Getting dressed, Naruto left the Inuzuka compound only to come face to face with Kiba. The youngest of the siblings glared at Naruto as her had his arms folded. You bastard! He growled. What? Spat Naruto. How could you do that to my mother? Barked Kiba. I only did her a favor, retorted Naruto, smiling a very smug smile. She wanted some relief, so I gave it to her. Kiba grabbed Naruto by the jacket, a fist ready to be in the man's face. She's not an object. She's not a toy for you to play with, growled Kiba. Maybe you should have thought about that before taking Hinata from me. No matter. I am in a better position. I am to bring back my clan, and to do that, I am to take many women to bring back my clan, stated Naruto. Since when? Hissed Kiba. Since it was decided by Tsunade-chan, spat Naruto, breaking out of Kiba's hold on him. Walking off, Naruto made his way to where he could sense Hana. She was in one of the training areas. Smiling at this, he shunned Shin to where she was. Kiba merely stood looking at the spot where Naruto was. His face of despair as he felt a tear run down his cheek. Why, Ka-san? Why did you stoop so low? He cried as he entered the compound to have a word with his mother. But for Naruto, he made it to where Hana was. There he perched himself in a tree and watched Hana train. Her nin dogs were nowhere to be found. She could be seen training in using taijutsu. But that wasn't what Naruto was interested in. Thanks to the massive sweat Hana had built up, her Chunin vest was unzipped, showing off her amazing bust. Together with the drenched tank top that clung to her skin, just made Naruto's hormones go crazy. What are you waiting for? Go her already! Barked the vixen inside him. Jumping down from the tree, Naruto moved to Hana. The eldest of the two siblings turned to find Naruto walking to her. And just like that, her heart raced as she began to go over her plan to have with him. Her libido wouldn't go down after she saw her mother and Naruto go at it like never before. And she felt really horny right now. Hey Hana-chan. Nice to meet you, said Naruto. You're very polite, stated Hana with a smile. You up for a spar? Asked Naruto. Sure, was all Hana said. The two sparred for hours and hours. But during the spar, Naruto used all he had to increase Hana's body sensitivity. And it was working. Hana's face soon became red, her body feeling heavy and her wetness growing. She wanted him. And she wanted him now. Sprinting at him, she grabbed him and slammed him against a tree, her lips meshing with his own. Naruto was taken back a bit, but smiled inwardly as he held her in his arms, pushing his own tongue against hers. Hana moaned as she felt herself become even wetter. After seeing her mother and Naruto do it, she felt her own lust grow. She wanted this. And what better way than to have with someone you know? And it just so happened to be Naruto that she wanted to have with. Breaking from her lips, Naruto looked to the horny woman before him, who just so happened to be getting his pants off. Where is this coming from? Asked Naruto, inwardly smiling at how he didn't have to do that much. I saw you. You and my Ka-san were having. At that moment, I wanted to have you as well. I don't mind sharing you with my Ka-san. As long as I get to have with you, I am happy, said Hana as she soon dropped to her knees and unzipped his pants. Pulling out his tool, she marveled at their size of it. He certainly was impressive for a man of his age. Licking her lips as she gazed at the before her, she heard Naruto speak. I promise you'll enjoy the taste, said Naruto with Hana looking to him. I certainly will enjoy it, she purred as she took the head into her mouth. The rich smell of the and the delicious taste of the pre-cum flowing out the tip and sliding down her throat was absolutely divine. He tasted like heaven. Hana knew she'd become addicted to him soon enough. Taking in more of him, she managed to get more than what the majority could get in their mouths. But she only had 2 inches to go. She soon began to bobbing her head back and forth. Sucking and slurping, she savored the taste of Naruto. Looking up to him, she found his eyes half-lidded and moans of enjoyment coming from his lips. She inwardly smiled at how she was making him like this. Deciding to go further, she relaxed her throat and took in the last few inches. She gagged a bit but continued to suck. Bringing a hand up, she played with his balls as she bobbed her head faster and faster. Naruto brought a hand down and stroked her head. This only made Hana moan as she increased her speed. She wanted to taste his cum. Here it comes, said Naruto, placing his other hand on her head. Yes. Let me taste you. Give me the stuff you used to my Ka-san, thought Hana as she soon was pushed onto Naruto's pelvis. Her eyes widened at the quantity of cum that flooded her mouth. Naruto sighed in release as he came lots into Hana's throat and into her belly. He was rather impressed at how Hana was keeping it all in. So much so, that it made him want to have her as a toy. Pulling himself out of her mouth, he watched as Hana licked her lips and brushed some of her hair behind her ear. So good, she purred as she undid her jacket. Watching the Inuzuka strip before him, Naruto found her to have a rather nice body. One which made him horny as hell. Or it could be Kyuubi that was increasing his lust. Either way, he would be making her his. Soon enough, Hana was in the end striking a pose before him. She licked her lips as she turned around and bent over. Come on. Don't leave me waiting. Give me that, said Hana with Naruto getting out of his own clothes. Grabbing her hips which made Hana arched her back and moan from the touch, she soon shivered when she felt his brush against her lips. Please. I want to feel it inside me, begged Hana. Very well, said Naruto as he roughly thrust it into her. Finding no resistance made it that much enjoyable. Giving her a slap, Naruto watched as Hana threw her head back and moaned. Ah, that feels good, moaned Hana gaining another slap. Well then, allow me to give you what you want, was all Naruto said as he began to thrust. Hana moaned in pleasure as she felt Naruto move inside her. Her walls clenching his so tight as she moaned like a bitch in heat. Well, she was in heat ever since she witnessed that. But now that she was here in this position, only made it that much better. For Naruto, he found her tightness to be rather impressive. It just him want to make her his that much stronger. Giving her a few slaps, he watched as the slowly turning throw her head back in pleasure. Grabbing her elbows and holding onto them, he gained more control. He was even able to reach even deeper into her. He could swear he was punching through her womb right now. You like that, huh? You? Barked Naruto her harder. Yes. I love it. I love it so much. I want your seed. Give me your cum. Give me all of it. I want to have it, begged Hana looking to Naruto. Be sure to take it all, said Naruto thrusting harder and faster. Hana screamed in pleasure as she found her mind blanking out from the lust and desire. She was Naruto's cumdom now. She knew that. The way she lost her hymen to her dildo, and then finger herself senseless was nothing compared to this. Pulling on her hair, Naruto groaned and grunted as he fired into her without warning. Hana's eyes rolled into the back of her head as her tongue dropped out her mouth. A smile creeping up on her face. I feel it. Yes. It's so warm. She purred only to find herself pushed back first to a tree with her legs hooked around Naruto's waist while Naruto lined himself at her entrance again. We're not done yet. I'm gonna pound you until you know where you belong, he ordered to her. Hana at that point found his words to be an extreme turn on. Her hungry, her womb full and her mind blank. She wanted more. She wanted it all. She wanted to become his. Even though she was already. Naruto roughly entered her and began to her again. Hana drilled her nails into his back as she placed her chin on his shoulder. Her eyes closed, her mouth agape as the sweet cries of her moans filled the area. Grabbing her to give himself more control over her while he nibbled at her neck, Naruto enjoyed and relished in the sounds of yet another woman conquered by him. Hana was him cumdom now. Much like her of a mother. Ever since Kami decreed it that he was to bring back the Uzumaki clan, sent him on such a frenzy. He was determined to have every single woman in the elemental nations and probably beyond, hooked up on his. Nothing was going to stop him now. Ah, 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 were the only noises from Hana as she was bounced on his. I'm getting close, said Naruto as he braced himself for another release. Yes, yes, cum in me. I want your child. I want your cum. I am your cumdom for life. As long as I draw breath, I am to satisfy your desires. Naruto-sama, orgasmed Hana, which triggered Naruto's own. Hana howled in pleasure as she drew blood from Naruto as he came lots into her stuffed womb. Once he was done coming into his newest conquered, Naruto dropped her like a sack of potatoes. Her face dazed and completely showing a stupid expression. Marveling at his new accomplishment, Naruto got his clothes back on. Walking away from the scene while smiling to himself, he made his way to the Hokage mansion. Tsunade would want to have her daily dose of cum. With that in mind, Naruto sped off. Making it to the Hokage mansion, Naruto knocked on the door. Hearing the Hokage give him the go-ahead to come in, Naruto opened the door. Once he was inside, he locked the door as Tsunade put up some privacy seals and closed the curtains to the office. Naruto was instantly out of his clothes along with Tsunade. Sitting him in her chair, she got to work. Naruto merely smiled as he watched Tsunade suck him off with so much wanton lust. Pulling the binds for her twin ponytails, Naruto found her beauty to be even more amazing. He preferred his women to have their hair down. The sounds of slurps and moans echoed through the office as Tsunade worked her magic for her tasty prize. What a dutiful you are, cooed Naruto, stroking Tsunade's head as she bobbed her head back and forth. I live to serve you in whatever way there is, she purred as she took his between her melons. You have proven your worth to me. And you shall be rewarded by siring my child, said Naruto as he began to thrust into her mouth. Yes, Naruto-sama, I will carry your child regardless, moaned Tsunade as she took the head into her mouth. A few minutes later, Naruto felt the familiar feeling. Pushing Tsunade's head down, forcing her to remove her jugs and take him down her throat. Her eyes rolled into the back of her head as she drank the gallons of cum Naruto deposited into her mouth. Finishing off after a few loads of cum, Naruto released his hold on her head. Tsunade pulled his out her mouth and licked it clean. Pushing her work off the desk, she leaned on the desk and shook her before Naruto. I want it in me. Please, Naruto-sama, she begged as she spread her cheeks. Very well. I'm in a good mood, smirked Naruto as he got up from the chair. Placing both hands on her, Naruto speared all inches into her. Tsunade threw her head back as her back arched. A loud moan escaped her lips as she felt Naruto move inside her. Oh yes, I've wanted this for so long. I love you, moaned Tsunade as she began to move from the impact of Naruto's thrusts. You only love this, said Naruto, slapping Tsunade's as he her silly. I love this because it's yours. I feel it hitting my womb. I want your children. Give me your seed, she begged as she came from feeling Naruto hit her special spot. You're such a. Maybe I should call you Hokage, said Naruto with a smirk as he smacked her again. You can call me whatever you want. Just me harder, moaned Tsunade. Grabbing both her arms, Naruto increased his pace, reaching deeper with each thrust as he mercilessly pounded Tsunade, smiling deviously as he listened to her moans as she was impaled more and more from Naruto's. Here it comes. Take it all, grunted Naruto as he picked up the pace more. Yes, inside me. I want it inside me. Get me pregnant. Give me your children. I want it so badly, moaned Tsunade as she heard the sounds of cracking from her desk. At this rate, she may need a new desk. Yeah, shouted Naruto as he fired into Tsunade. The busty blonde threw her head back as she felt the hot waves of her master's cum fill her. There was no mistaking it now. She was going to be pregnant from this point on. Pulling out of her and grabbing his clothes, Naruto looked to Tsunade. Laying over the desk, panting hard as she licked the cum that leaked from her, he smiled. I'll be back, said Naruto with Tsunade smiling to him. I cannot wait, Naruto-sama, purred Tsunade as she slowly got off the desk and got back into her clothes. Walking out into the streets, Naruto looked about, finding his next target. He was right now sizing up his marks on women in the village. All were rather nice, but he was looking for one other thing they seemed to lack. He wanted someone to break. The other women he were rather submissive. He wanted someone to dominate properly. Mirai, It's time to go home, came a voice. Turning to his left, he found Kurenai. The black-haired beauty was so tantalizing to look at. Her curves, her posture. Everything was wonderful. And apparently, Naruto Jr. seemed to agree with him. Licking his lips at how he was going to make that his, he approached her. Good day, Kurenai-chan. He said sweetly. Oh, hello Naruto-kun. How are you? Asked Kurenai smiling to the blonde. Wonderful now that I'm here with you. Complimented Naruto, making her blush. Thank you for the comment. She thanked him. Looking to the little girl, Naruto had a brilliant idea. How about some help with the little one? Suggested Naruto. I'd appreciate that, said Kurenai, not knowing what was about to befall her. Taking Mirai into his arms, he walked with Kurenai to her house. Once inside, Naruto helped Kurenai with everything in the house, such as cleaning Mirai's toys, getting her cleaned up and getting dinner sorted out. That last one was slightly hard for him, but thanks to a rather horny fox demon inside who wanted to wait until mating season, it helped. Mirai was sound asleep while Naruto sat on the couch. Kurenai soon came into the room and sat down next to Naruto. Thank you for helping me with my daughter, she said with Naruto smiling. It must be rather hard for you, being a single mother, said Naruto with Kurenai nodding her head. It is. Ever since Asuma-kun died, I had to raise our daughter. Times I never had any sleep, said Kurenai, only for Naruto to place a hand on her shoulder. I'll help you, said Naruto. I don't want to be a burden, said Kurenai, only for Naruto to shake his head. It's no trouble, said Naruto. The next few days were the best days Kurenai had ever had. Mirai was happy. Naruto played with her while she took care of a few other things while the two played. She even had a few days where she could sleep and not worry about her daughter. But she felt something missing. Something she needed. Little did she know was that it was this certain something Naruto was after. And it happened this one night. Finally putting Mirai to bed, Naruto made his way to Kurenai and sat down on the couch. Kurenai fixed themselves some tea while Naruto kept his eyes glued to her wonderful body. Oh, how he wanted that body all to himself. Now was a perfect opportunity to do it. Kurenai handed Naruto the cup and he took a sip, but faked a sip and messed it on his pants. Kurenai saw this and was instantly between his legs, a cloth in her hands and cleaning the mess. Watching her, he smiled and grabbed her face. Kurenai was taken back by the kiss and pushed Naruto off her while a blush swept over her cheeks. Naruto-kun, we can't, she said. Why, was all he said. Because, you're younger than me. We just can't, she replied. But that doesn't change how I see you. Kurenai-chan, you're beautiful. You're wonderful. And I love that, said Naruto with Kurenai looking to him. You really think so? She asked. She's so easy, thought Naruto as he nodded. I do, said Naruto. Kurenai brought her lips back to his and kissed him again. This moment, it felt too good to be wrong. Could she really do it? Could she really cheat on Asuma? But she hadn't felt the touch of a man for so long. Kami, it felt like decades since she was last with a man. Lust clouding her mind. All that mattered now was to fulfill her desire. Breaking the kiss, she gazed into his blue eyes and smiled to him. Let's take this to the bedroom, she purred, grabbing his hand and leading him up the stairs. Following her up, Naruto smiled as he knew he had her right where he wanted her. Just to give her a push and she'd be his for life. The door flew open and both Kurenai and Naruto got out their clothes. Once, Naruto gazed upon Kurenai's body while she blushed and covered her body. You're beautiful, said Naruto as he swiftly moved to her. Thank you, she purred as she wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed her. Falling onto the bed with Kurenai under, Naruto trailed kisses along her neck to her collarbone. Slowly moving down to her tits. Giving each a kiss, he journeyed further down. Dragging his tongue over her belly button, Naruto ventured further and stopped at his prize. Her had already moistened and was ready for the assault it waited for. Kurenai-chan, you're so beautiful. And I'll show it to you, said Naruto. I'd love that, purred Kurenai. Diving deep into her warm snatch, Naruto was earned with a loud moan as he swirled his tongue in her warm confines. Kurani herself latched her hands onto Naruto's hair and began to push him deeper into her, wanting him to explore deeper. Inserting 2 fingers to accompany his fingers, Naruto listened to the sweet moans as Kurenai began to grind against his face. Oh yeah, right there. It feels so good. Eat me out. I love it. She moaned as she continued to grind on Naruto's face. Speeding up his actions, he listened to her moans turn from moans to screams as her walls constricted around his tongue and fingers. He knew what was about to happen. She was going to come. Kurenai threw her head back as she cried out her orgasm, squirting into Naruto's mouth, who drank it all. Kurenai smiled as she looked down at Naruto. How was it possible for someone like him to bring her to such a climax? It didn't make sense. Yet it felt so good she wanted more. Flipping them over for her to be on top, Kurenai grabbed a hold of Naruto's and began to rub her unused against it. Feeling the head hitting against her folds sent jolts of pleasure up and down her spine. Licking her lips, she slammed herself onto Naruto's. Throwing her head back as she dug her nails into his skin, she gasped and panted from being filled once more. It's inside. You're inside. Oh, how I missed this feeling, moaned Kurenai as she looked at Naruto, who already had his hands on her tits. I'm glad you're happy, said Naruto as he began to thrust into her. Kurenai soon got the message and began to bounce on Naruto's lap. Feeling his reach deeper than what Assume ever could. It felt so good. So much she wanted more and more. She never thought such a thrill existed before. That was until she met Naruto. You like that, huh? I will have a wonderful time using this to my liking, groaned Naruto as he bounced Kurenai on his lap. Funny, the more Naruto talked to her like she was the more turned on she got. Her body felt hot. She was horny. And Naruto was washing it all away by having his way with her. That's right. Me. I am your cumdump. You can even get me pregnant and I wouldn't even worry, moaned Kurenai as she rode the young stud. Here it comes, said Naruto as he increased his speeds. Yes, come for me. Come in me. I want it so bad, said Kurenai as her walls clenched his hard. Grunting and firing his load into her womb, Naruto watched as Kurenai threw her head back and climaxed then and there. Her womb filled as she savored the pleasure of having release in such a long time. But she soon found herself on her back with Naruto on top of her. We're not done yet. I told you I will make this mine, said Naruto with Kurenai licking her lips. Then use it however you want, she moaned as she felt him thrust into her again. The cum inside her sloshing about as she was rocked back and forth. Her eyes rolled back, her body sweaty and her lower body now starting to ache from the. But she was hungry for another round. Pulling Naruto down to her, she threw her arms around his neck as she dug her nails into his back. Feeling him moving in and out of her like an animal. Cum leaking out her and forming a puddle on the bed. I am yours. I am your. I will always belong to you, Naruto-sama, cried Kurenai as Naruto picked up speed. Then take my cum again, growled Naruto, nipping her neck as he thrusted harder and faster. A few thrusts later, Naruto fired into her once again. Kurenai howled in pleasure as she felt her mind blank out. Never had she been brought to such heights. Asuma was no longer her husband. She was now to Naruto's, her master. She knew this won't be the end of it. And she would love to have more. From this moment on, she belonged to Naruto. It had been several days since Kurenai accepted what had become of her. She accepted it with all her heart. Even though she was in a sense having an affair against her late husband, she didn't care. He was dead, she wasn't just yet. So may as well enjoy your life before you go. But the way her new lover kept her felt like she was going to die. The last time they had was the first time Kurenai had been into unconsciousness. She also didn't care if she wound up pregnant again. She felt it was right to give her daughter a sibling. Sure, it will be a half-sibling, but she didn't care one bit. She had someone that will be there for her no matter what. Naruto felt so good. After claiming Kurenai as his own, he moved through the village once more. Like a predator on the hunt, he scoped out his prey. But he couldn't do that at the moment as Tsunade told him he should go see Shizune. Something about his medical checkup to see if he was still fit to do missions. He wished Tsunade would take it. But he knew why she wouldn't. He would end up having with her way before they got to the first part of the checkup. Walking to the hospital, he couldn't shake this feeling he was having. His mind kept telling him that something was going to happen. But he didn't know what. It wasn't regarding. Shizune was a very serious woman. She'd never do something immoral as sleeping with a man younger than her. Finally making it to the hospital, he walked to the receptionist and asked for Shizune's office. He soon got the directions needed and was already at Shizune's office. Bringing up a hand, he knocked on the door. A few seconds later, it opened to reveal Shizune. A lab coat resting over her shoulders as she looked to Naruto with a face of sternness. "Inside now and take off your shirt," barked the black-haired woman. Doing as she told him, Naruto removed his shirt and sat on the table. Shizune closed the door and placed a silencing seal on the door. Naruto raised an eyebrow at why she'd place a seal on the door for the room. But he dismissed it as Shizune walked to him and began to check on his body conditions. She kept making this gesture as she took down the notes. A small scowl here and there as she scribbled on the notepad. Thinking it was done, Naruto slowly put his top back on only to have a ruler slapped on his hands. "Who said you could put that back on?" barked Shizune. "But I thought we were done," stated Naruto. "But I thought we were done," he says. "We're not even close to being done. For the next test, I need you to be fully," she hissed. Gulping down as he did so, he stripped all the way and soon noticed Shizune also taking off her clothes. Stopping suddenly when his eyes took in the woman before him. Her curves were a feast to his eyes. Her plump rear, her slender legs that seemed to go on forever. Her wide hips, her D-cup tits, her smooth arms. He was soon brought out of his daze when he soon felt something warm encompass his crotch. Looking down he saw a head of black hair moving back and forth. Sucking his like candy would come out of it. His mind soon clicked and he instantly pulled himself out of her mouth. Shizune let out a hushed whine at how her treat was taken from her. "What the?" asked Naruto confused like. "What do you mean?" asked Shizune taking Naruto's into her hand and stroking it. "This. Why were you sucking my?" asked Naruto raising his eyebrow along with his voice. "Oh that. Well," began Shizune. Flashback. Shizune was seen walking to Tsunade's office. She had received reports that Tsume's cold and harsh nature had subsided. Like it was an overnight thing. Not only that, but both Tsume and Hana had fallen pregnant. Things were also beginning to look for the Inuzuka as their clan was starting to perform much like it had done many years ago. Shizune was also holding some documents in her hand and ready to tell Tsunade the good news. But when she got to Tsunade's office, the cries of pleasure pierced her ear. Thinking her master was in pain, she reached for a kunai and got ready to break down the door. but the aroma of pheromones reached and tickled her nose. Curiosity getting the better of her, she decided to peek in through the keyhole of the door. There she found Naruto nailing Tsunade on the desk Tsunade used for her work. The various documents scattered across the room as the two blondes rutted like bunnies in heat. Seeing her master so turned on while her eyes were rolled into the back of her head was a sight to see. So much that Shizune began to rub her wedding as she watched the scene before her. Flashback end. Naruto couldn't believe what he had just heard. Shizune had literally spied on Naruto and Tsunade while they were having like there was no tomorrow. And here was someone new. Waiting, no, begging to have his king sized inside her. Seeing Shizune look at him, lust hazing her eyes and she licked her lips at the hard tool before her. Naruto felt that this was going to be good. But if she wanted it, she'd have to work for it. Grabbing the chair in the room, Naruto sat down on it and smiled evil-like at Shizune before making a come here motion before stopping her when she got close. You want my that badly? Asked Naruto stroking himself while looking at Shizune. I do. Answered Shizune licking her lips. Oh it aches. I want that buried deep inside me and reshaping my. Please, let me have it. First you have to work for it. Said Naruto like. Give me a lap dance. Pouting at how he didn't give what she wanted, she smiled sultry-like as she nodded her head and walked to Naruto. Ensuring that her hips had the right amount of sway as she walked to him. Once she was standing over him, she placed her hands on either side of his chest and began to give him a nice dance. Her eyes locked with his, half-lidded as her lips tugged into a very smile as she occasionally licked her lips. Her body contorted and bent as she moved her amazing hips over Naruto's pelvis. Sometimes the shaft of his brushing against her, sending her body into a shaking frenzy as the hot rod kissed her folds. Switching positions, she placed her body in a twerking position and began to grind her rear against his crotch. Shizune never felt this much pleasure before. And she was only doing this to have this godly tool inside her. But she was caught off guard when Naruto grabbed her hips and speared himself into her hungry. Shizune's head flew back with her body bending at an unnatural angle. Time for your reward, said Naruto as he got off the chair and began to thrust into her doggy style. Shizune placed her hands on the desk as her body rocked back and forth. Her swaying as she was hard from behind. Moans and pants of pleasure flowed from her mouth as she felt the head of his kiss her cervix with every strike of his hips. She soon gasped when Naruto's hand came screaming across her left butt cheek, creating a red hand print as a reminder as Shizune felt dirty the way Naruto was treating her. And she was loving it. Believe it or not, but Shizune was a slight masochist at heart. You dirty bitch. You deserve to be punished. Hungry for another man's, grunted Naruto as he Shizune harder. Yes. I am a bitch. I've wanted your in me ever since that day. Please. Give me it. Give me your cum. Moaned Shizune only to find her hands being pulled back to give Naruto better support as he railed her harder. Take it all. Shizune. Climaxed Naruto as his swelled up and fired his load into Shizune's waiting womb. Shizune's eyes rolled into the back of her head as she opened her mouth and let her tongue fall out. Feeling the hotness of Naruto's cum flood her womb was something she wanted for so long. And now her wish had just come true. But Shizune was far from done. When Naruto pulled out of her, Shizune pushed Naruto to the bed and got onto the bed as well. Her face inches from Naruto's. Giving the tip a lick, she tasted and savored the taste of Naruto's cum along with her own juices. It tasted salty yet sweet at the same time. It was delicious. And also quite additive to her. A new form of heroin from her to enjoy. She soon took the head into her mouth and began to suck on it while she pumped the rest. Naruto merely watched as Shizune sucked him off. her slender fingers running along the veiny sides of his shaft. Her tongue lashed and slathered the head of his. It felt good. But before he could force her to take it all into her mouth, Shizune beat Naruto to it. Pulling her hand away and resting it on his thigh, she took all inches into her mouth in one go. It was extremely impressive. Naruto had often found that the women who blew him had gag reflexes. But Shizune had no gag reflex whatsoever. It was amazing. So as a reward, he let her take this one instead of him dominating her. That would come later. Shizune was in Forbidden Heaven right now. She was originally going out with Iruka. But that had clearly gone out the door since she did this. She'd be ending that relationship very soon. Oh well. Shizune began to pick up her paces as she felt him slowly become even harder along with the heat of his rising even further. She knew what was coming. He was about to come. She was planning on doing what she did with Iruka, and that was pull the out her mouth but not the head and let her drink the cum. But Naruto surprised her beyond anything as he grabbed her head and slammed himself into her mouth and fired away. The lodged down her throat and unloading load after load of cum down her throat to her stomach. Shizune sighed in happiness. Iruka had never been this rough with her. Making the switch was certainly a good call on her part. Not only was Naruto bigger than Iruka, but more dominating than he was. Iruka was gentle sure, which was nice when he took her first time. But after a few more, she began to feel that certain spice missing. And she had just found it. And its name was Naruto Uzumaki. Pulling him out her mouth and licking the head for the last drops of cum, she looked him dead in the eyes. Thank you, Naruto-sama. She purred as she got up and readied her. Squatting over him, she inserted him into her a second time. Her back arched as she felt him stretch her again. Placing her hands on his chest, she raised her hips only to crash them back down. Her moans soon turned into cries and then became screams as Shizune picked up the pace of her tempo of riding her blonde lover. Her juices and some of his cum leaking from her was seen as she slid up and down the now slimy shaft as she threw her body in every position ever imagined as she rode Naruto. Can you feel it? Moaned Shizune, locking eyes with Naruto. You're kissing my womb. I can feel it. I can feel it. You feel so good. I could you all day. Grunted Naruto as he soon felt her walls clamp down onto his while his expanded and got ready to fire. Cum inside me. I don't care if you got me pregnant. I don't care. All that matters now is you me hard and long. Moaned Shizune as she threw her head back as a mind-shaking orgasm ripped through her body with Naruto's seed flooding her a second time. Collapsing onto him as she panted, she felt Naruto's fall out her with some of his cum flowing out her slit. Moaning as she brought a hand to her dripping snatch, she licked her fingers while looking at Naruto. Such a shame to waste such good cum. She mewed as she winked at him. You belong to me now, said Naruto, giving her another smack with Shizune gasping in shock and pleasure. I do. I belong to you and only you. I am your loyal cumdump, said Shizune as she felt him go hard again. Another round it would seem. Purred Shizune only to find herself on the bed, with Naruto on top of her. Guess so, said Naruto as he entered her again. Best checkup ever.